What is up, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Talk Toomey here on notfest.com. As always, I am Joshua Toomey, rejoined by the one and only Chris Akin. Chris, how are we doing?
Been better. Definitely been better. I am sitting here dying in pain because my goddamn shoulder is killing me, but this one.
Nice.
This one is just fucking, I don't know what I did. I pinched a nerve. I know what I did. It's called mouse shoulder syndrome. It's from working too much and using a mouse, and it strains all your tendons and shit from wear and tear. But boy, am I feeling it now. Man, it is just, my whole arm is screaming.
Yeah, man, you didn't do CMS this week. I don't think you did Chris Akin Presents this week, and you mustered the strength to come on and do your Talk to Me obligations.
I'm giving it a go, as they say.
All right, so since you're down and out this week, we're gonna cut a little short. I'm gonna cut to my interview with Glen Matlock, formerly of the Sex Pistols, in just a few minutes. New album Consequences coming will be out, I believe, in April. A few of the singles are out now. Head on a Stick. It's a great interview, and that'll be a lot of fun. But man, let's dive into some news before we get into my interview with Glen Matlock. Megadeth's Dave Mustaine on Metallica, and why won't those guys play with us? What are they afraid of?
What are they afraid of? Why do they need to?
Right. In a new interview with Guitar World magazine, Dave Mustaine was asked how he views the perceived competition between Megadeth and his former band Metallica. The Megadeth leader responded, "In my mind, there is no competition between Megadeth and Metallica. We're different bands, and I believe Megadeth has been more consistent. But the sad thing is that the drama between us has been more popular than the music ever was. And remember, Metallica got a big head start, and they did so on the back of what I helped create. They became one of the biggest bands in the world, and here's one of the biggest bands wasting their breath trying to discredit me by saying Dave's not a good guitar player. Excuse me? What the fuck did you say? I think I wrote many of the songs that you made famous, so you probably should recheck that bullshit statement. But this is the shit those guys say, and you've got the sheep who follow them around believing it."
When did they say this?
Honestly, that's the first time I read this, and I don't think I've ever heard them say Metallica or Dave was a bad guitar player.
Yeah,
maybe a drunk, but not a bad guitar player.
I've been following Metallica since the beginning, I think, and I've never heard them say he's a bad guitarist. Like you said, drunk, yes. Uncontrollable, yes. Bad player, never.
Right. Do you think it's just at what point do you stop asking Dave about Metallica?
Well, reporters are never going to, because it's quick clickbait. You know, the answer is that Dave has to just stop answering about Metallica.
Yeah.
I mean, look, it's an easy thing with Metallica. You can ask Megadeth all you want about, we're back or whatever. What's the new album called? The Sick, the Dead, and the Dying. Yeah, you can ask them all about that. Yeah, you can ask them about that all day long, and nobody's going to care. You're going to get 1,000 clicks on your article. Or you're going to ask them something that has the word Metallica, and then you're going to get 100,000 clicks on it. So there's why people keep asking.
Right.
And until Dave stops answering, they're going to keep running it.
Well, I guess in my Ripper Owens interview, I actually brought up Rockstar, so I'm pretty sure I'm the 9 millionth, music journalist that's brought up Rockstar. But I actually had a little backstory with some stuff with him and me and him in the movie Rockstar. So I technically didn't ask him, so what was it like, man, having a movie made about you?
Dude, what was that like to watch for the first time, man?
Did you ever meet Jennifer Aniston?
Yeah. Do you know Marky Mark?
Do you believe that when he says, I believe Megadeth has been more consistent?
Yes.
Than Metallica.
I do agree with that.
Okay.
I definitely agree with that. I mean, Metallica's had that, they had the 90s, basically. I guess they were consistent in the 90s at making, less than good music. Yeah. But, I guess they were consistently bad in the 90s, Metallica. Where Megadeth's always been, I mean, they've had their ups and their downs, but really, if you get into what's been good and what's been not good in the Metallica or in the Megadeth camp, you come down to what? Super Collider and Risk.
Yeah.
And then everything else has been at least decent.
Yeah, but I mean, you had Load Reload, and that was kind of a...
Yeah, and S&M and S&M 2 and Lulu, and, you had a lot of crap in the middle there.
Yeah, I mean, Dave did the symphony thing, but I don't know if it was really pushed as a Megadeth thing.
Yeah. Nobody listened to it either.
And then Dave had a weird side project in there too. Who was it? He had like a punk. Who
MD45 with Ving. What's his name? Something Lee Ving.
Yeah. So I mean, they've kind of had a pretty similar career. The one thing that's consistent is they both kind of had that lull. They had a couple of weird albums, the symphony thing, the weird side project deal. But I will say that when it comes to the new Metallica, which I love. Like Spotify the other day played it like the new Metallica and then like back to back with some new Megadeth. And that new Megadeth, man, as much as I love the new Metallica, it just destroyed the new Metallica.
Yeah, that the latest Megadeth record is great, and Dystopia was great too. So Megadeth, it's easy for Dave to talk a lot of shit when he's on high again.
Yeah,
but notice he didn't talk all that shit when Super Collider was out there and nobody liked it. So
yeah,
it's easy now when he's making good music again.
The article goes on to say, ask who he thinks is at fault for perpetrating the issues, Mustaine said. The issue is that people don't know their history and take sides. I never wanted to take sides. I wanted things to be reconciled and to be friends, but for whatever reason, they didn't. Metallica is represented by the same agent as Megadeth. And I've asked our agent, you're Metallica's agent too. Why won't those guys play with us? What are they afraid of? And they've confirmed that they're going out with Five Finger Death Punch and the Pantera thing. So it's clearly about the money. The fact is simple. The world wants to see Megadeth and Metallica play together, which I don't disagree with. And in case anybody is wondering, there's fucking money in that. The fans want to see Metallica and Megadeth share the stage. Does Megadeth need Metallica? No. I'll disagree with that one.
Yeah, I was going to say.
But Metallica talks about their fans, but they don't give them what they've been asking for. What are they afraid of? I don't know. It's not me. It's them.
Look, the bottom line to this discussion is the bands that you announced as the openers for the Metallica, meaning Pantera and Lamb of God, Megadeth opens for.
Yeah.
And have opened for. So in the scope of who needs who, that kind of tells it. Megadeth is the third tier band. The second tier band would be Lamb of God. The second tier band would be Five Finger Death Punch. The second tier band would be Pantera. Metallica's King of the Hill, then the second tier. And then Megadeth, who opens for those bands, would be the third tier. Now, that's not me saying that Megadeth sucks. I love Megadeth. I mean, I love them. But in the scope of today's world, Metallica can go out as just Metallica in the round and sell just as many tickets as they will with any opening band.
Right.
So it's not about money. Dave's wrong on that. It's not about money. It's about money for Dave. Dave would make more money if he was out on tour with Megadeth, not Metallica.
Yeah, I was wondering the other day, like Metallica taking out Five Finger Death Punch, which is a big band, which is a fairly good band, but it's almost like a power move to like for Metallica to have Five Finger open for them after Five Finger has repeatedly taken Megadeth out as an opening band, and like it's almost like if there's truly like this weird underlying 40-year animosity, like Metallica's like, check out this move.
and that could very well be true. I mean, they look at it to think that Lars especially is passive aggressive is not a crazy thought.
Right.
I think Lars would definitely hold on to some shit from 1982. I just do. I think I think he would. Otherwise, I mean, but Dave's had his moment. Let's be honest. They had the big four shows.
Yeah.
So Metallica has played with Megadeth in the past. So he's complaining because he's not getting everything he wants, which is a typical Dave Mustaine move, period.
I would have loved to have seen, there was like a run of shows in like 93, and it was Megadeth and Metallica. And that would have been like peak time to see both of those bands together, like the Countdown to Extinction era, Black Album era, both bands. It would have been massive. And it was like 4 or 5 shows in like, the Eastern Europe or something weird.
And obviously, though, it didn't move the needle enough for the Metallica camp to say, well, we need to do that across the states.
Yeah.
If at their peak they couldn't get it done, why would they do it now when they're both kind of on the decline?
Another kind of a related story. David Ellefson says a new Metallica album is like a new iPhone launch. It's pretty much awesome.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now that feels like a dig.
In a recent interview with Meltdown of Detroit's WRIF radio station, former Megadeth bassist David Ellefson was asked if he has heard Metallica's 2 new songs, Lux Eterna and Screaming Suicide. He responded, I have. I liked it, and I think it's very cool. You know, just as much as everything with those guys, they're like Apple. When they do a product launch, it usually comes off pretty freaking cool. A new Metallica album is like a new iPhone launch. It's pretty much awesome. Ellefson went on to say that Lux Eterna and the announcement of Metallica's 72 Seasons albums and the accompanying stadium tour came out of nowhere last November while he was in Poland working on Dieth project, and quoted, and you're like, geez, I mean, this literally just dropped out of the sky. I don't think any of us saw it coming, which I thought was so cool, David said.
Well, I think we all said that. So,
yeah,
hey, I love that Ellefson now is not afraid to actually say good, positive things about Metallica. You know, it's been long enough, but yeah, that does feel a little bit like a dig at Megadeth or at Mustaine specifically to say something like that, you know, is really, it feels like a dig, and it probably is a little bit of a dig. Just like Jeff Young is out there taking digs, like not so subtle digs at Mustaine. What was the quote I read? I think yesterday or today, something about he's that Dave can't play or sing anymore or something like that.
Yeah. Jeff Young says Dave Mustaine can't play or sing some of the early Megadeth material. Yeah, I don't think Ellefson's came this close to being just this kind of shit on Mustaine. But yeah, like Jeff Young is just like pent up aggression after all these years. I mean, you know, Mustaine did kind of shit all over Jeff Young in the in his book too. So, you know, so it's kind of, I'm sure he's had 10, 15 years of pent up aggression. And now now people are wanting to interview him again. He's getting to kind of throw it all out there.
Exactly. It is fun. And it's funny that it's happening. And boy, couldn't be better for Jeff Young, because what is Mustaine going to do? He can't do anything. If he comments on it, it just makes that tour bigger. If he tries to shut that tour down, it just makes him look petty. There's nothing he can do but take it. And I'm sure Mustaine, it probably drives him crazy that's going on.
Yeah, it's definitely crazy. More Megadeth news.
All right.
It's official. Megadeth to reunite with Marty Friedman at the Tokyo concert. I'm pretty excited about this. I want to see this.
Is he playing the whole set though, or is he just playing like 2 songs or whatever?
Well, funny you ask, Chris.
All right, let's find out.
Dave Mustaine has confirmed to Rolling Stone magazine that former Megadeth guitarist Marty Friedman will join the band at its first ever gig at Tokyo's famed Budokan later this month. Friedman will come up on stage for 3 songs during the show's encore.
Okay.
So he's doing like the George Lynch approach.
Yeah, so he'll play Symphony of Destruction, and he'll play what?
I figured he'll do the Rust in Peace stuff, right?
Yeah, probably
Rust 18, Holy Wars.
Maybe. I mean, don't they usually end with like Train or one of those tunes?
I mean, they might, well, they could do like Train of Consequences or something, like that would kind of bum everybody out if you got it. Just did like euthanasia songs.
Right. Just did some average stuff instead of the good. Played a Tout Le Monde.
Right. Again, we're still trying to make this a single. The Budokan concert, which will be live streamed on February 27th and available on demand for a couple of days after, marks the first time in more than 2 decades Friedman has shared the stage with the group.
Wow.
When Marty said, "Hey, I can play at this gig," I thought, this is so magnificent, Mustaine told Rolling Stone. It's going to be so much fun to get Kiko and Marty together because they're both geniuses on guitar. Ugh. So this is like a gigantic birthday and Christmas present for me.
For him, but for the fans don't even want to see. Kiko should leave the stage.
We'll see. I mean, I'm excited to see what happens there. I will tune into this.
I'm excited to see it, but it's kind of that same thing like Saliva did, where they brought up Josie Scott, but they also kept the other guy up there too, the Amaru guy. It's like, no, that's not quite what the fans want. The fans want to see Marty play these songs. They don't want to see him dueling with the new guy.
Right. It'd be fun though. I mean, I'm definitely, it's just cool that Marty, I think, is open to getting up with Dave. But Marty seems to be a pretty relaxed kind of guy.
Well, Marty's making a fortune not with Megadeth now, so he's fine with it. He don't care.
You think Marty's bigger than Megadeth in Japan?
Oh yeah, I definitely think that. He's huge in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
He's like a TV star in Japan, isn't he? Like, or a pop star or something.
Right.
He's like something other than a metal guy in Japan.
Right. He's huge in Japan, as they say.
He is.
One last story before we dive into my interview with Glen Matlock. Charlie Benante on Playing with Pantera. I don't think I've ever been so judged in my life by people.
Gee, wow. I wonder if he saw that coming.
In a new interview with notfest.com, not me, Anthrax's Charlie Benante revealed that he sought the advice of Exodus guitarist Gary Holt before he played his first show with the newly reconfigured Pantera.
Okay.
For nearly a decade, Holt filled in for Slayer guitarist Jeff Hanneman after the latter was unable to tour and eventually died. What a sentence. I felt Gary adapted so well to Slayer, Benante said, and more importantly, fans accepted him because he was Gary Holt. And it's fun to replace a member in a band that's been so established and people grew to love. And there's a certain style that goes with it. It's tough on the person coming in, of course, because you have to ask, am I going to be accepted? Am I hitting these things right? How much of myself do I throw into this? So it's a little bit of a struggle. You either have to go full on or you don't. I think Gary played a lot of Jeff's stuff like Jeff, but he also had Gary in there too. And for me doing the Vinnie Paul thing, I'm trying to do it as close to Vinnie as possible because that is so much of that Pantera sound. The aggressiveness of those drums, the way they're tuned, they cut through the rest of the instruments in the band.
Yeah. You know what? He really, what the most fortunate thing Charlie has? He's saying he feels ultimately judged. The most fortunate thing Charlie has is the fact that Zach's not doing that. And Zach is really getting judged because people are not really paying as much attention to Charlie as they are to Zach. And Zach has been taking quite the beating online.
Yeah, I think the one thing with Zach is Zach is actually doing more of what Gary was doing in Slayer, where Gary came out and said, I'm not playing this note perfect. I'm, if there's a signature, guitar pattern in the guitar solo, I'm going to do those notes, and then I'm going to do something else, and then we'll come back to it. Which Zach is somewhat doing with Dime's guitar playing, and Charlie, for the most part, is pretty much note perfect to Vinnie Paul, however you want to, I don't know if the feel is there or whatnot, but he's at least attempting to hit everything like Vinnie Paul would.
Hey, all I know is it's good enough to get me to go to 3 different shows, so I'm in. Keep doing what you're doing, Charlie.
If your arms hasn't fallen off yet,
dude, I will get whatever shot I gotta get into my stupid shoulder to go. I'm going.
All right. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. I see a lot of people are going to the Indianapolis show, so we might really have to get meet by the merch booth, and we'll grab we'll do a black tooth or something.
There we go. Sounds good to me. Drinking? Yes.
Yeah. Yes, please.
Especially if my arm is still sore, then I'll really want to drink.
Yeah. One for you, pouring a little bit on your arm, making sure it feels better. Let's dive into my interview with Glen Matlock, formerly of the Sex Pistols. Like I said, new album, Consequences coming, is out in April, and then a couple of the singles are out now, and it's a fun interview, and I will send you there now. And Chris and I will be right back with some reviews and recommendations. All right, guys, let's welcome the legend himself, Glen Matlock, to the Talk Toomey Podcast here, notfest.com. Glen, how are we doing today?
Not so bad, Phil. It's a bit nippy here in London today, but yeah, good. So,
it's also a bit nippy here too, so I feel your pain.
it's a level playing field.
Right. Yeah, I'm not in the good parts of the States like California or whatnot, where it's like 70 and sunny all the time.
Yeah, but that wears a bit thin after a bit as well. So,
so you've got a new solo album, Consequences, coming April 27th on Cooking Vinyl Records. Man, just listening to the record, it's your songwriting ability is just amazing. Like you're an amazing songwriter. Have you always kind of just had that knack to be a songwriter?
I don't know. Yeah, you have to work at it a bit. I just like kind of classic songwriters, like Ray Davies and people like that, and all the Tamla Motown writers, and I kind of liked all the stuff from the 60s is kind of my yardstick. I don't want to sound like that, but it's kind of quite a good blueprint for a song. And I also really like traditional songwriting. Well, not traditional songwriters, but people like Sammy Cahn and Anthony Newley who've written big show tunes over the years, but
right.
Very well put, lyrically clever songs. Who's the other English Jewish bloke? Lionel Bart. I could pick out my top 15 songs and I throw a little curveball in there. So I put in From Russia with Love, which is actually sung by a guy called Matt Monroe, who for a bit, his fantastic voice, was supposed to be the English Frank Sinatra, but he sang the theme tune in a James Bond movie, but it's actually written by Lionel Bart, who wrote loads of kind of show tunes, Oliver, stuff like that, Yeah, so I like any kind of music. The only yardstick is whether it's good or not. But then, of course, that's beauty is in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah, listening to the album, I mean, obviously it's, kind of marketed or thrown out there as, former Sex Pistol or whatnot. So you're kind of expecting one thing and then you put it on and you get, kind of what you're talking about, that kind of 60s throwback of just really good songwriting. But the one thing I like about the album too is it's kind of upbeat and peppy. But if you dive into the lyrics, I mean, you're obviously speaking on some pretty heavy topics.
Well, I like to. I think, the album's called Consequences Coming, which I hope we'll see a little bit down the line for certain people who are trying to rule the roost in a not very particularly benevolent way to most people. Where am I going with this? But yeah, you got to be spirited when you're saying something like that. And the whole Sex Pistols thing, yes, I did that a long while ago. But I think if you put those songs next to the Pistols, maybe not sonically, but construction-wise, there's not a great deal of difference, really.
I hear that too. Yeah. So,
it's a cross I have to bear. It's not such a terrible one,
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, if that's the cross you have to bear of putting out writing a classic record back in the day, that's a good thing to have on the resume. Talk a little. Obviously, we talked a little bit before we start recording. I'm over in the States. I don't understand Brexit. I don't understand what's going on over there. But I've watched a few interviews with you, and you're kind of touching on it. So just kind of like what's the main issues, I guess, with what you're upset with.
Well, the main issue for me, but it's not only that, and I think what I'm trying to say is a bit more universal than that. But if you look at a globe, a map of the world, you see Britain, England, the United Kingdom. I don't even know what we're called, really. Just right on the edge of this great block called Europe, with all these countries that got fantastic cuisine, ways of going about things, history, social, looking out for the majority of the people. And we've been cut off from that, basically. You can still go on holiday. Before, you could go to any of those countries, get in your van or your car with your guitar and go and work and just stay there. And they stopped us from doing that. And they stopped us from doing that because it plays in the hands of this sort of right-wing cabal who have this thing where they can have offshore financial money and don't pay tax on it. But they're the people who are ruling us. So it's very kind of hypocritical, really. There's more to it than that, but that's kind of what it boils down to. But I think in the Western world, there's been a real, I don't know what your politics are, hopefully they're similar to mine, but I think there's been a real lurch to the right by people who pretend they're going to look out for the common person. And I've got no intention of doing that, but because they control the media, they kind of sucker people into thinking that they're on their side. And I'm kind of looking at somebody like Trump, really. So a lot of those songs were kind of written when you don't put an album out because you wrote and recorded it all a week ago. There's a gestation period, and the songs were written through the rise and fall of Trump, Boris Johnson over here, the whole Brexit thing. You know, you got the MAGA movement over there. Not my cup of tea. So the songs are kind of a bit to do with that, really, and my take on it. He's nodding.
No, I'm listening and learning, Glenn. I'm listening and learning. You talk about the tour issues, and the one thing that we see stateside is a lot of bands aren't able to get to Europe right now and to get to England right now because of the skyrocketing prices for they do a tour budget for one price and then they're about to head out and they realize it's 3 times the budget and that they have to cancel things. Is that where we're talking a little bit too?
Well, we're talking a little bit about that, and I think the whole COVID thing and the Brexit thing again has been a crafty way of hiking prices right across the board. You know, big multinational corporations just put everything up, and then it comes down a little bit, and they say, "Oh, it's come down," but it's come down nowhere near where it was before. But a big thing in England, I'm not just talking about me as a musician. There's a whole service industry that supports musicians. So much so, a lot of American bands would come over to England, pick up a tour bus, go into Europe, and come back, hit England on the way back and go back. And they would do that for 2 reasons, mainly because the English technicians and caterers and roadies and lighting guys have got a reputation for being pretty good, and B, because they speak English very well because they're English, right? And you Americans have got a different take on English to us, but there you go. But now they don't do that. They go and hire a bus from Barcelona or somewhere like that and give England a miss, and it's put a lot of people out of work for no real reasons apart from people can keep their offshore tax haven money. There's that, you know.
It's funny you have I wrote down a line from the record because I guess it's a slang that I'm not accustomed to, and it says, "I may be slow, but I can cotton on real quick." What does that mean?
Well, cotton, understand. Surely you say that in America when you cut. Hey, can you cotton on to this, mate? Look, you're doing it wrong. You know, cotton on is just saying you understand something.
That's what I assumed, but it was spelled out like the fabric cotton, you know, like not cotton.
It is spelled out and said the same as cotton.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm a Cockney. And,
that's like, you know, of all the accents around the world, I think that might be one of my favorites. So,
right, okay.
I was actually listening to you and on the Jonesy's Jukebox, and you guys are just going back and forth. And half the time, I'm like, I have no idea what's going on right now.
Well, the thing is, Steve's been stuck in LA for donkey's years, and he tries to be as English as possible. And when he finds another Englishman, he tries to outdo them with the rhyming slang. You know, we got this thing called rhyming slang. And he can't. Sometimes he makes things up, you know. So you have to make something in return just to stitch it. But you know, I mean, the whole idea of rhyming slang was that basically in the East End of London years ago, if some people were up to some skullduggery, and you might be in a pub and there's a policeman there, they would speak in this kind of slang that the policeman couldn't understand what you're up to, you know. So,
very smart, very smart.
You know, I can give you a little example. You know,
bring it.
You could say to somebody, "God, do you see that bubble over there by that Richard?" Right? And that means you see that Greek person, Bubble and Squeak, which is one of our sort of fry. It's a bit like Ash Browns, right? Right? And Richard III, bird, girl.
Wow.
But, you know, if you don't understand, you see that bubble with a Richard, it's like, there you go. So
we're all learning.
I try to be universal, but sometimes I fail miserably.
No, I love it. I love it. A couple things. I'll bring up the Jonesy's Jukebox thing I had. The one part I thought was great is, and I've been in bands with people for years, and you don't really know the person as well as, you know, people assume that just because you were in a band, you should know everything about that person because, you know, you toured or you were in a room with them or whatnot. But even at the beginning of the Jonesy's Jukebox interview, he's asking you, you know, like, how did you get into playing bass? You know, which is crazy to me because he obviously has known you for forever.
Well, I think one of the problems with the Sex Pistols is that we didn't actually talk and discuss that much.
You didn't have band meetings.
You just did your bit, and that was it. But I think also he was playing on I'm the radio interviewer kind of thing, and he was probably asking me some of those kind of questions. But it was funny. It's a bit of a silly story. I'm a fan of a football team called Queen's Park Rangers, and we were doing all right, and then we suddenly started doing better. And I like to think it's because every match before the game, I bought a Lucky Chicken Balti Pucker as the brand name pie. Pucker means really good.
Okay.
And I started taking a picture of it at the ground and posting it on Instagram or something like that, and people were writing silly things out. And then the team started doing better. And so I then felt whether I needed one or not, I better do it, otherwise the team would lose. Anyway, I did it about 3 or 4 times. And Steve Jones, I haven't spoken to in a couple of years because of lockdown, this, that, and the other, and just the way it went. He wrote to me at half time. He went, "You down Loftus Road," which is where the ground is, and we reconnected over a pint. So he likes a pie himself.
Don't we all? Yeah, I love that you have your superstitions about your football teams too. You know, obviously my American football team, you know, I have to have the right jersey, sitting in the right spot on the couch with the right drink, you know, and so maybe I'll have to start doing what you do. Yeah,
pies all round.
There you go.
Not very rock and roll, but tasty and savory too.
There we go. A couple Sex Pistols questions. It's funny. I was actually going through and just watching interviews from you from 83 to 79 and every single one of them asked the same exact question you've been asked. You know, like, why did you leave the Sex Pistols? So I'm not going to ask you that one. But did you watch the Hulu show Pistol?
Yeah.
And how accurate was it?
It's not. It's a lie.
Okay.
Right. I told Steve. He said, "What do you think?" I said, "Mate, you got a shocking memory." And we sat straight. I was disappointed. It could have been so good. Yeah. And I had a couple of meetings with Danny Boyle, and I was assured this was going to, especially a bit about my leaving of the band. You know, that whole episode is a lie, and it's taken me 45 years to kind of get people to agree with my way of thinking. And now he's put me back to square one. So I'm not very happy with Danny Boyle. But I did go to a sort of a red carpet thing in Los Angeles, mainly to back Steve up in the summer, because I was over there touring with Blondie, who I've been playing with. And Danny Boyle came up to me, and I told him what I thought of him. Yeah. So anyway, Danny Boyle is under no illusion what I feel about him. So there you go. But on the other end, I thought it was important that the show did get to be made. I know John wasn't happy about it, but John wasn't really happy about it because it wasn't based on John's story. It was based on Steve's book, and Steve formed the band. So, you know, morally,
I thought it was
right, but I was ultimately disappointed.
Right. Yeah. Just watching the show. I mean, for the fact that it was kind of based on Steve, which was, I thought, kind of refreshing because you would assume it would be based on John, but it just Steve kind of putting himself out there in so many negative lights, you know, and just kind of seeing all of that stuff. It was a fun watch. I know most people complain about band documentaries and things like that, no matter who it is. And, you know, if you don't get it 100% accurate, you know, it's crap. But I thought as a show, I thought it was pretty good, but I hate to hear that you didn't like your portrayal. Yeah.
Well, there you go. So that's that. Where does that lead us to?
That leads us to your take on, you know, kind of that punk culture just kind of still lasting, you know, like kids still look like the Sex Pistols. Like now, like if you go to certain parts of town, you're still going to see, you know, the crazy hair and the clothes.
Although,
and
mind you, people seem to look like a cartoon image of what they thought we looked like. I don't think we ever particularly really look like that. But, you know, I've been quite fortunate that I've had a kind of quite an up and down career, but it's been kind of, you know, you could draw a good line through the middle of the sine wave that is the roller coaster of my musical career. Yeah. And I get to travel around the world, and wherever I go in the world, there's quite a strong punk coterie of people who see punk not necessarily like the cartoon cutout people you're talking about, but see it as like a byword for an alternative way of looking at things and music that's a bit more thinking and a bit more happening. And if you look at the original punk bands, it was a very broad church. You know, there's a big difference between the Sex Pistols and Susie and the Banshees and the Buzzcocks and Richard Hell and the Voidoids. And there's a long way between, I don't know, the Clash and the Damned, you know, but it's all part of this thing. And that's kind of quite interesting. And also, when we came through, I mean, we were the first ones in England by a good year, but the scene we came through on, it sort of revolved around Malcolm McLaren and Vivian Westwood's shop where I worked, and Stephen Paul would come in, and at a later date, John would come in. But it was almost like a youth club on a Saturday afternoon for every oddball and weirdo. But nearly everybody who came through the doors of that shop went on to do something of consequence. You know, Susie would come in. Malcolm Perrone from Adam and the Ants, Adam Ant, would come in. There was that girl Jordan there. There was a guy who used to come in called William Broad. It became Billy Idol. You know, everybody went through those doors, and there was photographers and other would-be fashion designers, and Jamie Reed, who did the fantastic artwork. One of the guys who hung out there was a guy called Bernard Rose. If you don't know, he's the guy who helped Mick Jones form the Clash and managed them. So, you know, it was quite an happening place to be.
Yeah, it sounds like
and
it.
And in fact, awesome. Even once I was working there, door opened mid-afternoon, Ian Hunter and Mick Ronson came in.
Wow.
And I sold Mick Ronson a pair of pink kind of 50s style loafer shoes, which he then wore, because this was like, I don't know, about 74, even 73. And then he went off and did the Rolling Thunder tour, and they made that, you could say wacky, but it's not very good actually, that movie Ronaldo and Clara, you know, about where it was the guy from, is it some Hawkins, from somebody in the Hawks, Ronnie Hawkins, he plays Bob Dylan.
Okay.
And Ronnie Blakely plays Joan Baez, and Joan Baez plays somebody else. I mean, it's like a load of tosh, really. But in it, there's a bit where they're trying to get backstage, where Bob Dylan and Joan Baez are trying to get backstage to see the people who are supposed to be Bob Dylan. And there's a guy stopping them, and it's Mick Ronson wearing the shoes that I sold him from Letter Rock. I told everybody in the cinema, I sold him them. They all went shit.
I love it. Let's get it back to Consequences Coming as we kind of wind down here. Talk a little bit about, I mean, you got a lot of heavy hitters playing on this record too. How did you get everybody together to play on the record?
Well, basically, I promised them the earth, but they end up with a cappuccino and a sticky bun. But they'll do it anyway. But they're heavy hitters, but they're colleagues, they're friends, they're people I've worked with in some different shape or form over the years. And I think we've got a mutual respect from each other. I think one of the people, I mean, as well as El Slick, and Clem Burke plays on a couple of tracks, and I've got my mate Chris Musto plays drums on the rest of it. Neil X, who else? We've got James Halliwell, plays keyboards, who's also touring with the Water Boys. A guy called Hot Eye, a big Japanese guy who's like, he's like the Jeff Beck of Japan, and he wrote the Kill Bill theme tune. But also, a few days before I started recording, a little while back now, because it's taken a while to get the basic tracks and then update all the songs and that brings us here. I went to the opening of the Clash exhibition. It was like a big retrospective of all their artwork and all that. And I don't know, I was in the Sex Pistols, I'm at a Clash thing, but they're mates. I was standing there, and Norman Watroy from the Blockheads, you know, Andrew and the Blockheads came up. And
nice.
He was a great bass player. I mean, if ever I have my picture taken with him out and about, I always say, bass player me and a bass player and a half him. Anyway, I said, what are you doing tomorrow? And he said, well, not a lot, really. I said, I would have thought you was busy. He said, people think I'm so busy, they don't have a call me. And then the phone don't ring. I said, well, I'm going to go and record a record. Do you want to come and play some bass with me? And he said, I'd love to. So I got him playing bass, and I just strummed the guitar. So it's cool, you know. But I like, you know, I like writing as simple a song as possible, maybe with a riff and what the song's about, and then throwing that out to the guys, and see where it goes. It gives it all different flavors and colors. I do the black and white bit, then they do the filling in with the color.
I just assume that's why my phone doesn't ring too, because everyone just assumes I'm busy, So that's what I'm telling myself too.
But I will point out that our little interview got interrupted by a phone call.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, Glen, man, it has been an absolute honor to have you on the show. As we wrap up, just are you going to be touring this record? Obviously, with Brexit and all that stuff, I guess it's going to be a little bit harder. But will you be touring the record?
It's not impossible, but it's just nowhere near as easy or as straightforward,
right,
as you could do. Basically, I've got a couple of little gigs in England. I'm committed to playing with Blondie. In fact, I'm going to be we're going to Mexico and. Where are we going to? We're going to Lima and Bogota. What's that? Colombia. And then we're doing Coachella.
Oh, nice.
In California and something else. So I'm doing that. And then there's a big break in May. So hopefully I'm trying to set some shows up for that here. And then we got more Blondie stuff June through to the beginning of July. And then I'm free, so hopefully this kind of publicity that I'm doing and people are beginning to dig the record quite well over here, and I'm getting a lot of press on it. It'll sow the seeds to be able to go and tour properly. But I like playing live. There's never that much on the telly, so on the TV. Sorry, do you call it TV or telly?
It's the TV. Yeah, I've always, the telly always throws me off because it sounds like to me that sounds like the telephone, but it's on obviously the TV. But
yeah. Or the box, we call it. The goggle box.
The goggle box. That's what I'm going to start calling it from here on out.
Yeah, but not Google.
Right. Goggle.
Yeah. Anyway.
Quickly, man, how did the Blondie gig come about?
Do you know what? I was cooking dinner kind of about this time last year. A couple of neighbours were coming around, and the water was beginning to boil over, and the oven was going ding, 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 because the chicken was ready and all like that. And the phone rang, and it was Clem. And I thought, I'm not going to get that. And my friend said, no, I'll turn all this off. Cool. And it was Clem Burt. And he, it's not like he doesn't call up every now and then anyway. I said, what do you want? And he said, we need a bass player. And I said, what's wrong with Lee? He said, well, he's a bit under the weather. I said, well, when do you need a bass player? And he said, next week. And I'm like, oh. And I said, I haven't got a work permit. And then he went, well, think about it. And I kind of thought about it overnight. And I set a few trains in motion. Next thing, I'm on tour with Blondie. In fact, the first gig we did was in Scotland, although I had to go to America to sort a few things out. And I walked on stage with him in front of about 15 to 20,000 people, so it was in at the deep end, But I've done my homework, and I like Blondie. I've known Clem since probably. Do you know what? I think I first met him and Debbie and Chris. I did a one-off gig with Sid Vicious, this thing called the Vicious White Kids, in London in 1978, and they turned up, and I kind of met him then, and we sort of struck up a relationship, and we've been. Mates and played on different projects, and some good, some a bit airbrained, but we've done it and we play well together. So I was chuffed that he asked me, and I'm glad I did it. And in fact, I was working on a new album with him in the fall in New York, and I don't know what the finished thing sounds like because I just did the rhythm tracks with Clem and then left him to it. But that could be interesting too. So I like to do lots of different things within a certain idiom of maybe that's a little bit more, maybe Blondie or a bit kind of bubblegum pop group, but there's a kind of left field artiness to them too. And I think they got, again, I keep saying it, but songs of consequence, that they add up to a bit more than the sum of the parts, which is always a good thing. Yeah.
Well, Glen Matlock, it's been an absolute honor to have you on the show. I could talk to you for hours and learning all the slang and all of the, all the great sayings and things like that. But once again, Consequences coming out April 27th on Cooking Vinyl. Glen Matlock, it has been a pleasure.
Okay, can I say one more thing, though? There is actually a single out now called Head on a Stick. So don't forget that. And you can check that out on YouTube and wherever and it's kind of worthwhile, I reckon. Yeah. But then I would say that.
Absolutely. Thank you, Glenn.
All right, mate. See ya.
Yep. All right. Huge thank you to Glen Matlock of the Sex Pistols for coming on the Talk Toomey podcast. And before we get out of here, Chris, let's do some reviews, recommendations, and I got a couple of music ones this week. I'll dive into first.
Okay.
Nonpoint put out a new song called "Heartless," and the last 2 tracks that Nonpoint has put out have been super heavy.
Sure.
And I was actually texting with old Rob Rivera and a little name drop. And I told him, I was like, dude, I'm loving this new heavy direction. He's like, oh, it's getting heavier type stuff. So, new Nonpoint track, Heartless. Definitely check that out. New Butcher Babies song, Beaver Cage. So you know that they were having fun with that name. Old Beaver Cage
no doubt.
From the Butcher Babies. It's one of those, I don't know if they're getting a lot better or if the fact that they're just really nice to me makes me like them.
Right.
But I'm really enjoying old Beaver Cage from Butcher Babies. And then full album, I'm a little on the fence with still, but I'm a big Paramore fan. Their new album, This Is Why, is out. And so far the singles that have been out prior to the album are still kind of my go-tos. It definitely sounds like a pop punk emo band that's grown up.
Right.
They're trying to be a little bit more maybe artsy and whatnot, but it's still catchy. It's got its moments, a little moody here and there. So I dig it, but it's still one of those there. I think Jamie Josta was saying, like, you put out the new stuff or the new stuff sells the old stuff. So like I listen to the new Paramore album, but I still go back to Riot,
Sure.
Right after, kind of get a palate cleanser, but new Paramore album, not too bad from those good old Tennessee boys and girls.
Very cool. Well, the only stuff I have this week, because I have just been laid up, so I've just been binge watching old stuff. So I went down the rabbit hole of Entourage for the first time in probably 5 years, and forgot how good that show was. I mean, that show is just so fun, and I literally just binge watched all 8 seasons or whatever, and just a great show, good fun. And then musically, this is probably going to surprise you, but I watched the first show of the Motley Crue tour with John 5.
Okay, actually that was on the list, so yeah, go ahead. Just
because I wanted to see how that played out, and I'm gonna be honest, it sounds fine. I mean, Vince Neil's still the weak link, nothing has changed there. But John 5 looks very bored. He really looks like he's just going through, which he is, because he's way more talented than the music of Motley Crue. But just watching him do it, he just seems extremely bored. But that being said, it sounded good. I'd imagine if you were there, you enjoyed it. It's still the big show with all the big stuff blowing up and the hot girls dancing and, and the songs,
Yeah, I mean, I watched a couple of songs from that first night just to kind of see how it was going. And yeah, it did. John 5, love him to death. And I think there is an element of it's too easy for him. Like, you almost want it to be like, almost look, at least make it look hard.
Yeah, he should be thrashing or something because he just looks like he's bored.
Yeah, I think it's going to take him a few shows to really get into like a groove with that band, because a lot of times he was just kind of like walking around and like with really no purpose. And I thought about this before we even started recording tonight, and the whole, and this is totally, how much we love the Pantera quote unquote reunion, and it's called Pantera. And, even though everybody's like, it's not really Pantera, I almost wish that Nikki and Tommy and John would start a new band with a good singer and just put out good music. Obviously you can't call it Motley Crue, and you can maybe play a couple of Motley Crue tunes, and then you're not going to get the, you can't do a stadium tour as a new band. But I think I would be way more excited about a Nikki Sixx, Tommy Lee, John 5, and whoever band than this version of Motley Crue that they're trotting out there.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, I'll never see this version of Motley Crue. That's a given. I'm never going to see it. But, I was interested to watch it, and still don't have a singer that can sing, so it's still not worth $500 a ticket to me. So get a good singer and maybe we can talk.
Yeah, there we go, man. Maybe we'll, you've talked rumors on your other shows about, somebody stepping in for Vince. I mean, at some point, I mean, you can't call this Motley Crue anymore. Obviously, once again, I'm a hypocrite because I'm saying that, you know, you can call Pantera, but you can't call, you know, Nikki and Tommy and two other dudes Motley Crue. But you know, if they were to replace Vince Neil, I mean, could they really continue as Motley Crue?
Depends on who you get. I mean, dude, if I know one thing to be a fact, it's that every city in the country has a Motley Crue tribute band in it. Yeah, every city does. So there's bound to be somebody that has the look and has the sound that could Arnel Pineda this thing. I mean, people said forever that you couldn't, you know, and again, we're going to a different style of music, but
right.
But obviously, who would have ever thought you could replace Steve Perry?
Yeah.
And they did it twice. You know, they did it twice with guys that replaced Steve Perry and did a good job. So could you replace Vince Neil, a shit singer at best? Yes.
Right.
Absolutely. If you got a guy that sort of sounds like Vince and just hits all the words, I think people would be happy.
Yeah. Would you go like Motley Crue cover band route, or would you go other 80s guy with a name like Stephen Pearcy or something?
I think I'd go unknown.
Yeah.
I think, you know, and I mean, and again, I'll go back to the Journey example. Steve Augeri came from what, Taiketo or Tall Stories or both, or some nondescript 80s band, like not a big band, but not a tiny band either. And, you know, and it didn't really work really well. It didn't grab much traction. Then they got the unknown guy that nobody knew anything about. And that was part of the story, was the mystery of that guy.
Right.
So I don't think you go and get, I don't know, Ralph Saenz from Steel Panther or whatever. I think you got to go with somebody sort of unknown and somebody young too. Get somebody young, somebody that's got that youthful energy that's actually going to run around the stage and not be dying between the bass microphone and the lead microphone. You know,
right.
I don't know. I mean, it's never going to be, if you get a replacement singer, they're not going to still be doing stadiums, like you said. It's just the nature of the beast. It's just not going to happen, but it could still be, you could probably eke another 10 years out of the band though, if you did get a quality singer that sort of sounds like Vince.
Yeah. They're one of those bands too, that Tommy is a big draw and Nicky, you know, has his fans and, you know, and then John 5 actually adding to it. And then, if you added another singer to it, I think you might actually be able to pull it off. Yeah. Like you said, not a stadium, but maybe, you know, large theater, maybe arena on like a package tour kind of thing.
Well, the question is, do they need it? They've made a shit ton of money, you know, since the dirt, really. They've made a ton of money. So do they really need to do it? They probably don't really need to do it. And I mean, you're 60 whatever years old and you're starting over, and then you go into Tommy. Tommy doesn't even like this kind of music anymore. So does he really want to be in a band making music he doesn't like, or does he want to go make Methods of Mayhem 3?
I think there's just a certain point in your life where I don't think it's about the money. I think it's truly about, we still got it. You know, we can still sell out the arena. We can still sell out the stadium. You know, we're still cool, you know?
Yeah, but look at what Tommy does outside. And again, I'm just pointing at Tommy on this point. Yeah. Everything he does outside of Motley Crue is purposely designed to not sound anything like Motley Crue. Yeah. Solo music, the Methods of Mayhem stuff, that weird video he had with all the creepy crawly things from a year ago, and the you know, caviar on a paper plate and all that other horse shit that he does. Yeah. You know, I mean, he does not like this kind of, and he's been vocal about that he doesn't like it. So I can't see him starting a new band into a style he doesn't like.
True. Yeah, if they started a new band, he might actually even try to incorporate some of the drum and bass stuff that he's been trying to do over the years.
Yeah, which never worked when he tried it the first time with Motley Crue. When he tried it on Quaternary, everybody hated Planet Boom. You know, and then when Generation Swine came out, they had all those songs that were all kind of electronic and weird, and everybody almost universally calls that the worst Crue album of them all.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't see it. I mean, it would be nice as a fan, you know, and I was a fan of Motley Crue, not so much anymore, but as a fan, if they got a decent singer, I would give it the old Van Halen one try. You know, I'd be like, all right, I accepted Van Halen with Sammy. give me a good singer, I might accept Motley Crue with another guy, but I don't know. I think it's kind of over.
Right. Well, I think we'll get out of here, man. I actually wanted to give a big shout out to Baco for kind of stepping in last week on short notice, and he was kind of the replacement Chris Akin last week.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he did a good job, better than I usually do. And he doesn't dye his hair,
right? Oh man, but we are a positive show, Chris. Here at the Talk Toomey podcast, the Talk Toomey Positive Cast.
That's right.
So yeah, so that'll do it for this week. Once again, huge thank you to Glen Matlock for taking some time. That was a lot of fun, and an interview I'd love to actually get a second shot at too. Like now that I kind of know his cadence and know what he likes to talk about and stuff.
Sure.
I think he would be a fun one he'd be a great guy to just sit down with a pint, at the bar. And just
right.
Because in the interview, he started teaching me like, English slang and,
nice.
And he was like talking about how you can kind of like talk about a girl walking down the road without, being obvious. It's like this weird rhyming thing. You'll hear it in the interview, but
all right, cool.
Yeah, it was a fun interview, but yeah, so huge thank you to Glen Matlock. Make sure to check out, once again, Consequences coming. And so for the Talk Toomey podcast here at notfest.com, I've been Joshua Toomey.
And I am Broken Wing.
And we will talk to you guys soon.
See ya.